Sono Cino Zucchi, siamo in via Revere 8 a Milano, ma avrei deciso di parlare in inglese perché credo che oggi il mondo sia diventato così piccolo che non possiamo più vederlo da un punto di vista tutto locale. I'm Cino Zucchi, founder of Cino Zucchi Architetti, and this is the Architect Series. An architecture studio today is some sort of strange ecology putting together different people, but of course it has a character that derives from its own history, which in turn is related to the person who founded it, that is me. After a quite perilous trip to Afghanistan on a Ford Transit bus in 1973, I enrolled myself into the Faculty of Architecture. And in that very year, I read a book which was called The Limits to Growth by Donella Meadows from an MIT team. It was the first alarm on the environmental emergency. I got so scared that I sent an application to MIT. I got in, and I got my bachelor there, studying mathematics, physics, chemistry, artificial intelligence. Finishing there, I got back to Italy. I got my degree in Milano. And at that time, Italy was very on historical studies, and I totally changed my attitude somehow, or point of view, writing a quite scholarly book. It took me 5 years to complete it, on Milanese courtyards from the Renaissance to the Baroque. I redrawn with my own hands all these beautiful Milanese courtyards, which went from very high culture to, I would say, everyday popular architecture, which is the one who makes a city. The recent developments of Milano and of many other European cities pose again and again a dilemma, which has been going on for at least 200 years, between the tradition and innovation. I think tradition is waved by people who don't have it anymore. Paul Valéry used to say this exact phrase. On the other side, I myself belong to some kind of milieu or legacy of Italian modernist architecture from the 50s and 70s. I was born and raised in a house by Cacciadomignoni. He died when he was 100 years old. He was an extremely local architect, a little snobby, and now everybody in the world got crazy for it. The Grafton architects, some Irish curators of the Biennale, asked me to do a work on them. Many years I did this installation about Cacciadomignoni. I even hid in the cover my photo, this is 1973, of Cino with Cacciadomignoni. He did the house of my parents, and he wrote to my baby Cino. And 50 years later, this is also hidden, I was at his 100th birthday, his 50 years distance, and this is a sketch of Cacciadomignoni before dying on my house of the Portello. It's the red correction to my own project. Today, everybody goes crazy about it, and people come from California, from China to see his work. We find things resonates with the heart very far away. The more the world gets global and the center, the downtowns of all the world cities, they look all the same. I was in Dubai some days ago, and you could take a picture of the center and go to Singapore or to Montreal. I don't know, look that different. More and more people are looking for very special things. Cacciadomignoni is a special flower that can only bloom here. This condition to us is what we work on.
Sono Pietro Bagnoli, sono stato studente di Cino Zucchi, mi sono laureato con lui e ho lavorato nel suo studio per 6-7 anni. Lavorare in contesti internazionali o direttamente collaborando con un grande studio di matrice anglosassone o anche seguendo molti progetti in diversi paesi stranieri a lungo mi ha permesso di capire che ci sono abitudini diverse, modalità diverse, ma anche differenze nei regolamenti locali, nelle prassi costruttive e anche nel modo di abitare gli spazi. Questa attitudine di modificare l'approccio al progetto a seconda del contesto in cui ci si trova è un approccio che lo studio ha e che probabilmente è una delle cose che hanno permesso di avere sempre più progetti in ambito internazionale. Stiamo in questo periodo sviluppando progetti in Francia, a Gibilterra, in Tunisia e in Cina.
The change in scale from a very individual local studio of Cino Zucchi Architetti to a more global scale came from the winning entry to a competition project in 1995 for the refurbishing of an industrial area, the Junghans area, but the peculiarity that this area was in Venice. It was very difficult for us because there was a contradiction between keeping these industrial buildings and the sort of mythological image of Venice. We succeeded in doing that, making a melange between the existing buildings, the new ones, we even opened a new canal. But what is also interesting is that we managed to do a building which you can see it is modern, but it has some kind of texture of feeling in its own body which absorbs what Venice is. It's not historicist, it's a modernistic building, but it was very successful and the building was very rooted to its place, but has been communicated globally. I have a number of paintings, I collect paintings of people from all over the world which made it into an icon. So it's this double life today you have between a building rooted to a place and also a global icon which is transmitted through electronic media.
Certo, lo studio allora era molto diverso da oggi, era più piccolo per dimensione, erano molti meno i collaboratori e non si seguivano così tanti progetti come oggi in parallelo.
Io sono Stefano Goffi, sono il direttore dell'ufficio. I progetti dello studio sono molto vari come tipologia. Il nostro studio non è uno studio, specializzato, è uno studio trasversale che fa dal progetto di interni al master plan e lo ha sempre fatto per sua formazione, quasi per sua attitudine. Viene un po' dal modo di affrontare il progetto.
Cino, nello sviluppare i progetti, parla spesso di una certa area di famiglia, questa è un'espressione che lui usa spesso, che hanno gli edifici che concorrono a determinare la qualità e anche l'identità di certi luoghi. Forse possiamo dire che una certa area di famiglia ce l'hanno anche le persone che lavorano in questo studio e che hanno lavorato in questo studio. Vale per gli architetti e vale forse anche per certi committenti.
Tendenzialmente non accettiamo un lavoro se non abbiamo la fase di cantiere. La fase di cantiere vorrebbe dire di direzione artistica nel nostro caso. Crediamo che sia il mezzo per garantirci la qualità, garantirci quell'approccio artigianale che abbiamo alla volta al progetto, quindi appunto seguire tutto l'edificio dall'inizio alla fine.
Se da un lato in studio c'è chi porta competenza, esperienza e la capacità di gestire progetti complessi e anche processi complessi, dall'altra ci sono le nuove generazioni che portano nuove competenze, nuovi strumenti tecnologici e anche tutta l'esuberanza e l'entusiasmo che ci contagiano in qualche modo.
One peculiar feature of our studio is that we had the luck to do projects from the urban design scale down to the detail. through the architectural scale. We won a competition to do the headquarters of Lavazza. Everybody knows this, the coffee people. We all drink Lavazza coffee, of course. But it was not just the headquarters. We had a design school as a program, a cafeteria, a quite high-level restaurant, a congress center and event space, the Lavazza Museum, all held together by a public space, which is a breed between a piazza and a garden, which is used by the neighborhood. This was very important because the area was very close to the center of the city, but was also quite, had some kind of social problems. We even found a Romanesque basilica in the foundation, just to say that the European city is quite layered. We managed to show the remains of the Roman basilica, but today you have this beautiful garden with a fountain where the children from the neighborhood play, but also where all the employees go out and go on the other side of the piazza to get the lunch. One person from Lavazza say, "Thank you, Cino Zucchi. You convinced Giuseppe Lavazza to make the cafeteria out of our main headquarters." If for a moment we think of an architect as a DJ or a composer, probably the architects of the past were more composers. Today we're more like DJs because we assemble industrial pieces. We don't design everything from scratch. We have an equalizer. We could dose different sounds to make a sound or song, or in this case, a building. In the Lavazza building, we mix different materials. You have glass, you have oxidized metal in a sort of brownish finish, you have backpainted glass, and you have white artificial stone, which is used to connect the new building to the building we managed to keep. But we have transition pieces, which were some kind of trilith, Stonehenge of white artificial stone, which put together the old, this part, the garden, and the new. I was a musician, I was a drummer. I cannot work without music. A good architecture is like a good song, we use it in the background, It really, when we work, we hear music, and I think we have today our everyday work with some kind of nice background, in this case, the beautiful Lavazza spaces. I have a lot of respect for what you call high commercial music or high commercial films, are totally done on a script. Catastrophe movies in America. It's always the same script with variations. But then from time to time you have The Magic Word of Amélie, some kind of film, even for Hollywood, which remixes things and gives new feeling. So you have some kind of commercial linear production. A lot of studios all over the world, they have this sort of high commercial attitude and they're very productive, but sometimes they get boring. It's always the same line, it's a bit something like custom. We try always to be very bespoke, to treat each client as new, each occasion as new, but also to interwoven some kind of consideration we do on a longer period, and sometimes they get crystallized in a single project.
Sono Monica Lang e mi occupo della comunicazione. Noi siamo uno studio molto tradizionale dal punto di vista della comunicazione, per cui ad esempio pensiamo che si comunichi quando c'è qualcosa da comunicare, e il contenuto della nostra comunicazione è un oggetto più che uno slogan o il famoso concept, e è un oggetto vero e proprio, e quindi partiamo da quello e comunichiamo quello. Detto questo, è anche vero che la comunicazione in architettura, oggi come oggi, è fondamentale, anche perché ci sono tutti questi mezzi tecnologici che la rendono così diffusa e hanno anche aperto a un pubblico che va oltre il pubblico degli addetti ai lavori. Questa io penso che sia un'occasione anche per noi, perché ci dà modo di entrare in contatto anche con persone dal punto di vista empatico possano apprezzare lo stile dello studio, lo stile di Cino e della progettazione che facciamo, e ci dà modo di entrare in contatto con quelle persone che colgono, secondo me, quella particolarità che definisce la progettazione legata a questo studio.
An hospital in the Renaissance was a place to wait for death. During the plague, we had no cure for death. Then it became some sort of military place to fight illness. You know, the Chelsea Hospital in London or the Red Cross is organized as a fight between the good armies of the doctors or nurses against the bad armies of evil illnesses. Then it became some kind of machine in functionalism. Think of Alvaralto Sanatory. And I think today a hospital is a place of healing people that welcomes not only the patients, but also the families, the nurses, the doctors, many other people. We won this competition together with Tiziano Binini and partners in Andria for a new hospital. The territory is a quite strong one. It's still built in a very agricultural part with olive trees, and to consider a hospital a social place, it's very important for us. It's not just a healing machine. And to consider also in a quite sophisticated territory. For example, we replanted all the olive trees which were in the site in the new garden. So how to melt down this sort of functionalist machine into the territory and welcoming people. So the social part becomes very important. The climatic factors, the place where it is quite warm in the summer, so shading, you live a lot in the open space. So we think this could be a really new generation of healing places.
Sono Michele Corno, architetto, lavoro da Cino Zucchi da parecchio tempo, diciamo circa più di 15 anni. L'esperienza di Saronno è una proprio molto particolare, molto bella, perché c'è anche il committente, che sostanzialmente è un privato cittadino che ha deciso di investire direttamente per cercare di rendere bene comune quella che è l'area di Saronno, che è sempre stata sostanzialmente, i poli industriali hanno sempre avuto forse più relazione a larga scala, perché c'è la ferrovia che gli entrava dentro, fa parte di un sistema economico, ma a livello poi di relazioni urbane e sociali è abbastanza sempre circoscritto e delimitato.
I'm Nayan Kim. I work in Cino Zucchi Architetti since a couple of years. The project is contained the school program, and it is not only for the simple function, but also inviting the citizen from Saronno.
Molto importante il fatto di essere un'area industriale della dimensione paragonabile a quella delle grandi metropoli, però essendo a Saronno, che è pur sempre una città dove c'è una piazza del paese, cioè è all'esterno di quello che è il nucleo milanese, diciamo la prima fascia, il primo giro, è una prima possibilità di riuscire a lavorare con la comunità locale ancora molto forte, quindi con la piazza cittadina, con un sistema più allargato di relazioni nazionali, quindi con Milano, con la città di Milano, e allargate anche a un territorio, diciamo, quasi europeo, comunque molto molto più ampio.
The architecture team is not inserting the program, but also harmonized and revalue the existing context.
Bisogna pensare che poi nel corso di 10 anni, che magari è il naturale sviluppo di un piano come questo, poi sicuramente potranno cambiare le condizioni, però il parco dovrà comunque essere poi il bene comune a disposizione della città di Saronno.
As Stanley Kubrick, as a movie director, did Lolita, he did Barry Lyndon, he did A Clockwork Orange. He's always the same director, but the films are totally different in subject, and he uses techniques which are different. Some people ask me, Cino Zucchi, how could you have done the Saleva building in Bolzano and the Venice house? They say they don't look the same. But of course, in this sense, I think the attitude is the same, but the language can be very different. A client saw the Saleva building going on a highway and asked us to make the exterior of a machine, which is an automated warehouse, for Pedrali. It was a big box of 30 meters in the middle of the countryside, even if it's at the end of a very sophisticated industrial piece. So the wiring of the city were of some kind of environmental insertion of the piece. We managed to convince the small city officers that something which can be seen some kind of hiding of mitigation of an infrastructure could become beautiful. Now, people bicycling along the way, they stop and look at the sun turning around and making incredible effects. In this case, Pedrali is wonderful. There's a moment where the sun reflects on the green side and on the other side and looks some kind of butterfly wing. It's really astonishing when you're there. And Pedrali loves it. It became the landmark building. You can visit the whole automated warehouse from the inside. You know, you always have tours. So we're happy to have transformed a big machine into a landmark.
Mi chiamo Joseph Rigo e collaboro con Cino alla ricerca, specificamente nell'ambito universitario. Quest'anno, ad esempio, nel laboratorio del Politecnico abbiamo organizzato insieme a Giancarlo Floridi e il suo laboratorio un ciclo di conferenze intitolato Urban Grace, che ha portato a Milano 3 studi europei a raccontare la propria visione della città contemporanea.
When I used to be a student, I heard the lecture of my professors and then I went to look at the work and I was grossed out. It's very difficult to be a practicing architect and a professor at the same time. I teach at the Polytechnic, but also taught in Harvard. I try to get some kind of coherence, and what I preach is the same that I preach to myself. Raphael Moneo used to say, I don't ask to others no more no less than what I ask to myself. This to me is very important in the ethical point of view.
Quello che mi sembra molto interessante è che nel lavoro di Cino ci sia una grande ricchezza e una grande diversità anche di spunti, e questo si traduce anche nella didattica, nella ricerca, che non è dogmatica ma è sperimentale e ricorsiva e approccia il progetto attraverso dei paradigmi culturali.
I have a picture of my daughter Chiara. She's asleep on a sofa with her computer open, the laptop, the iPhone set on her boyfriend 10,000 miles away, a box, the remain of a food of a delivery food. This picture is the living contradiction of what we call the functionalist house. The idea that each room should correspond to one function. Today, we send mail, sit on a side of a bathtub, work on the kitchen table, and so on. On the other side, all the attempts to reform housing in the 50s and 60s, I would call the space age house. You have this Futuro house, which looks like a jelly bean or a flying saucer from a Finnish architect. When I was a kid, I would believe we would live like the Jetsons, but maybe we can live in a Palladio villa with a Macintosh. This means that we should respond to new behaviors and lifestyles with some kind of urban attitude. Some time ago, Nathalie Merchant, she's my idol, the lead singer of 10,000 Maniacs, was in the studio. She was the background of my education. She got really moved by this scene. And she used to sing "The Tide is Flowing." It's an old English song with some kind of electronic, let's say, background music. A lot of singers today, or a lot of artists, include fragments of continuity and antiquity into a very contemporary attitude. This is also what we try to do in our work.